At midnight, I found myself quietly walking toward the old barn at the edge of my family's property. It wasn't part of my usual routine. In fact, I'd never really been there at this hour before. The barn had always stood quietly at the edge of the farm, something familiar yet oddly mysterious, especially in the dark. The air around me was cool, filled with the gentle scents of damp earth, fresh hay, and the subtle warmth of animals sleeping nearby. Everything felt hushed, like the night was sharing a secret only with me. As I approached the barn, my heart began beating faster. Not from fear, exactly, but from anticipation, curiosity about what I'd discover inside. The old wooden door creaked softly when I pushed it open, a sound comforting and familiar. Stepping inside, I felt my eyes slowly adjusting to the dimness. I noticed how peaceful the barn felt, illuminated softly by the faint glow of a single lamp hanging quietly in the corner. Long shadows stretched across the walls, gently moving whenever a slight breeze drifted through. The atmosphere felt charged with something I couldn't quite explain, as though I'd stepped into a place holding secrets, waiting to be discovered. Walking deeper into the barn, my gaze moved slowly from stall to stall. Horses stood quietly, sleeping or resting peacefully. But then, my attention landed on a particular stall, and that's when I saw him for the first time. Standing quietly, nearly hidden in shadows, was a horse I'd never noticed before. Cole, a stunning, powerful stallion with a dark coat so deep it seemed to pull in the soft lamplight. Something about him immediately drew me closer, an unexplainable attraction that went beyond simple admiration. His presence seemed to fill the barn, powerful yet quietly reassuring. The muscles beneath his sleek coat shifted slightly as he became aware of me. I stood still, mesmerized, watching him. I'd never felt this way around a horse before, or around anyone for that matter. It was as if I'd found something within him that mirrored something hidden deep within myself. Slowly, almost cautiously, I approached him, aware of the silence surrounding us, except for the soft crunch of straw beneath my feet. I reached out gently, my hand trembling just a little as it made contact with the warmth of his coat. The heat surprised me, a contrast to the cool night air. It was comforting, calming even, and yet it stirred something deeper within me, a feeling I'd never truly acknowledged until now. As I stood quietly beside him, I realized this moment was more than just about a horse in a barn. It was about confronting something within myself, something I'd kept hidden, safely tucked away beneath layers of routine and habit. I'd always seen myself as someone who followed the rules, someone careful to avoid uncomfortable emotions or experiences. But now, standing here quietly with Cole, those internal boundaries felt blurry, uncertain, almost meaningless. My heart began beating faster, not out of fear, but from excitement, curiosity, and perhaps even courage. The courage to face feelings and desires I'd always ignored or suppressed. Standing there in the quiet barn, I realized this mysterious encounter wasn't just about the horse. It was about me stepping into unknown emotional territory. It was about daring to acknowledge parts of myself I'd hidden, either from fear or from misunderstanding. Cole seemed to sense my shifting emotions, calmly standing beside me, his gentle breathing steady and reassuring. The quiet connection between us felt powerful, meaningful, even transformative. In this simple, peaceful moment, I felt brave enough to look inward, examining emotions I'd avoided for so long. This midnight encounter was teaching me something about myself, that it was okay to feel deeply, honestly, without fear of judgment or rejection. Cole stood quietly, a silent witness to my self-discovery. his gentle strength providing comfort as I explored these new feelings. This wasn't about physical touch alone. It was about emotional honesty, about finding the courage to face parts of myself I'd kept hidden. My fingertips gently traced along his coat, feeling his muscles beneath, strong and reassuring. The experience wasn't just about connecting physically, but emotionally, about learning something profound from the quiet strength of this beautiful animal. As I stepped back slightly, still feeling his warmth lingering on my fingertips, I knew this mysterious encounter had changed something important within me. The barn, once just a familiar place I'd often passed by without thinking, had become a sacred space for self-discovery and reflection. The quiet connection I'd shared with Cole had opened a door within my heart, giving me a newfound clarity about who I was and who I wanted to become. When I finally turned to leave the barn, stepping slowly back into the cool night, I felt a sense of peace and acceptance. This midnight moment had helped me recognize a truth I'd never faced, my true self, complete with emotions, desires, fears, and strength. I wasn't afraid anymore to feel deeply, to explore honestly, or to accept myself fully. The mysterious barn, the quiet night, and Cole's powerful presence had together led me to a beautiful realization. I was ready now to embrace this journey of self-discovery, knowing clearly who I was and who I wanted to be. The night air welcomed me back as I stepped outside, refreshed by this newfound clarity, ready to integrate these lessons into my life. Stepping further inside the barn, my eyes slowly adjusted to the dim, gentle light. The air felt warm and cozy, filled with the comforting scent of hay and the earthy aroma of animals. I was here late at night, alone, but somehow it felt natural, like I was exactly where I needed to be at that moment. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I walked quietly across the straw-covered floor. I'd always felt drawn to this old barn, a peaceful space away from the demands of everyday life. But tonight, something about it seemed different, more mysterious and alive. It was as though the barn itself held secrets, inviting me deeper into its calm darkness, whispering softly to my soul. My heart beat a little faster, not because I was scared, but because I felt a strange excitement, a thrill of discovering something new about myself. And then, standing quietly in the soft glow of the corner lamp, I saw Cole clearly for the first time. He was a beautiful stallion, his coat so dark it seemed to capture and hold the light itself. Just standing there, he radiated strength, confidence, and quiet power. His muscles were clearly visible beneath his sleek skin, moving slightly as he shifted his weight, drawing my attention completely. His presence was magnetic, pulling me closer almost without me even realizing it. I'd seen horses before, of course. I'd cared for them, groomed them, been around them plenty. But Cole felt different. His presence was so strong, so commanding, it was impossible to ignore. I was drawn to him, feeling an almost magnetic attraction that went beyond admiration. It was as though he represented something deep and powerful, something I'd always felt inside myself but had never allowed myself to explore. Slowly, cautiously, I approached Cole, feeling my heart beating faster with each step closer. When I stood near enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body, I reached out gently, placing my hand softly against his side. His coat was smooth, warm, and reassuring under my palm. This simple act felt surprisingly intimate, as if touching him was opening a door within me, one that had been locked tightly until now. His breathing was steady, calm, comforting me even as it stirred emotions deep inside. Standing next to him, I felt strangely protected, yet completely vulnerable at the same time. I realized this wasn't just about my job as a caretaker, it was a moment of personal awakening. Cole's powerful, quiet presence was awakening something within me, something deep, primal, and real. My heart continued to beat faster, a rhythm of excitement and curiosity. I realized this fascination wasn't simply about Cole. It was about discovering hidden parts of myself, feelings I'd never fully explored or acknowledged. Standing beside him, I was forced to confront truths I'd ignored for too long, desires I'd kept hidden even from myself. His calm strength encouraged me, quietly, to be brave, to face who I really was. The barn around us felt like a safe space, a private place to explore these intense emotions. I wasn't afraid of judgment here, not from him, and for the first time, not from myself either. Slowly, I allowed myself to fully accept these feelings. I realized that the boundaries I'd always believed existed were mostly created by my own fears. Cole's silent strength taught me it was okay to let down those barriers, to experience the world and myself honestly and fully. His presence was powerful but gentle, making it feel safe to explore this new emotional territory. I continued standing beside Cole quietly, letting my mind wander freely, allowing myself to fully experience this sense of fascination, acceptance, and personal growth. It was an awakening of sorts, one that reached beyond this moment, touching every part of my life. I felt lighter, freer, unburdened by the expectations I'd placed on myself. This wasn't about breaking rules recklessly. It was about understanding myself better, accepting parts of me I'd always kept hidden. Cole had unknowingly become a catalyst for my own growth, showing me how powerful vulnerability and authenticity could be. Eventually, I took a step back, still feeling his comforting warmth lingering on my fingertips. I looked into his dark eyes, sensing a silent understanding between us, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment we'd shared. The experience felt deeply personal, a quiet secret I would keep close to my heart. Leaving the barn felt peaceful, even though I knew I'd never forget this night, or the emotions it awakened within me. I walked back toward home slowly, feeling different from when I'd entered. The night sky above was calm and reassuring, mirroring the peace I'd found within myself. I knew this encounter with Cole had forever changed me, not by pushing me to do something wrong, but by inspiring me to look inward and explore the depths of my own heart. I'd discovered new layers of emotion, a new acceptance of myself, which was liberating and comforting all at once. As I settled into bed, I felt the warmth of the night and the gentle quietness of the barn still surrounding me, like a comforting memory. I knew now that this mysterious midnight encounter was just the beginning. It wasn't something I'd repeat, not because I regretted it, but because I'd gained what I needed, a deep, genuine understanding of my true self. The old barn, Cole, and the quiet night had become symbols of my journey toward authenticity, courage, and acceptance. It was a secret I'd always carry, not because it was shameful, but because it was precious, personal, and deeply meaningful. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt gratitude for the experience and excitement about the future. The boundaries I'd crossed within myself had taught me not to fear my emotions, but to embrace them fully. This was my journey, my awakening, and I was ready now, more than ever, to keep exploring, living life fully as my authentic self. Standing there beside Cole in the quiet darkness of the barn, I felt emotions I didn't fully understand yet couldn't ignore. My new job as a caretaker was supposed to be straightforward: feeding horses, grooming them, keeping things clean. But the simple presence of this powerful stallion had awakened something inside me that felt much deeper, much more personal. As I began brushing him, feeling the silky strands of his mane beneath my fingers, I found my thoughts drifting into territory I'd never considered before. The barn felt peaceful, hidden away from the world, safe enough for me to confront these unexpected feelings that had begun stirring inside. Each stroke of the brush along Cole's powerful body felt soothing, yet strangely intense, as if every gentle movement was an invitation to look inward. Why was I feeling so strongly drawn to him? It wasn't just admiration of his beauty or strength. It was something more personal, deeper, something I was discovering about myself for the very first time. This wasn't just about taking care of a horse. It was about recognizing feelings I'd long ignored or hidden from myself. My heart beat faster as my thoughts deepened, bringing emotions I'd always pushed aside out into the open. I'd spent so much of my life carefully avoiding situations that made me uncomfortable, never allowing myself to question or explore deeper feelings. But now, here in the safety and solitude of the barn, standing close to Cole, I found myself facing emotions that both excited and frightened me. Cole stood still, patient, and calm, allowing me the space to explore these complicated feelings without judgment. His silence felt supportive, like he somehow understood my confusion and uncertainty. The barn felt like a place where I could safely confront myself, where I could finally be honest about emotions I'd never fully allowed myself to acknowledge before. My heart beat faster, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement mixed with uncertainty, a thrill of stepping beyond familiar emotional boundaries. Each moment I spent grooming him allowed me to move deeper into myself, discovering desires, fears, and hidden truths that I'd always pushed aside. Cole's warmth and strength beneath my hand provided reassurance as I began to accept these unfamiliar parts of myself. I was surprised to realize how tightly I'd kept myself bound within rules and expectations, never daring to explore beyond what I believed was acceptable or proper. But tonight, in this quiet space beside Cole, those rules seemed less important. Instead, I felt an urge to understand myself honestly, to admit emotions I'd previously denied, not because they were wrong, but because they felt complicated or uncomfortable. Each quiet movement, each brushstroke against Cole's sleek coat was more than just grooming. It was an act of emotional exploration, a gentle yet deliberate effort to push past internal boundaries. My heartbeat quickened not from physical exertion, but from the internal journey I was embarking upon. I felt vulnerable, exposed, yet surprisingly empowered by this honest examination of myself. It wasn't easy to accept these conflicting emotions, but standing quietly with Cole gave me the courage to face them. His powerful presence reassured me that it was safe to explore, safe to question who I was and what I truly desired. The barn, once just a simple workplace, had now become a sanctuary for my personal awakening. In this dimly lit space, away from the eyes and judgments of others, I finally allowed myself to question, to explore, and ultimately to accept my own complexity. Each touch was symbolic, a confirmation of my willingness to understand myself deeply, honestly, without shame or guilt. As time passed quietly in the barn, my confusion slowly gave way to understanding. These intense emotions I'd considered forbidden or unusual weren't wrong or bad. They were simply natural aspects of who I was, human feelings that deserved acknowledgement and respect. Cole, with his quiet presence, had shown me something valuable, that genuine strength comes from embracing all parts of yourself, even the ones you don't immediately understand. Eventually, I stepped back, my hands still feeling the warmth and strength of his body. Looking at him, I felt gratitude, not just for his presence, but for the gift he'd unknowingly given me. This quiet night with Cole had helped me confront and embrace my own emotions, reshaping my understanding of who I was and what I wanted. I left the barn knowing something profound had changed within me. My old patterns, the comfortable safety of ignoring deeper feelings, no longer felt necessary or even desirable. I'd found the courage to face my hidden self, to question my boundaries, and to accept the full spectrum of my emotions. The barn had transformed from a simple workplace into a place of deep reflection, growth, and transformation. Cole had unknowingly shown me the path to self-awareness, quietly guiding me to discover strength and courage within myself that I'd never imagined existed. Walking home under the starlit sky, I carried these new realizations with me. I wasn't confused anymore, just quietly confident in my newfound awareness. This intense experience wasn't something to fear or regret. It was something to embrace, something to build upon as I continued to grow into the person I was meant to be. The darkness around me was comforting now, a quiet companion, reflecting the peace I'd finally found within myself. The mysterious encounter had become a journey inward, showing me clearly that facing my true desires wasn't frightening. It was freeing. I had discovered unexpected strength in vulnerability, courage in honesty, and power in simply being myself. This was just the beginning of my journey, but I felt ready, guided by what I'd learned tonight in the quiet solitude of the barn. Cole had helped me uncover truths about myself I'd long hidden away. Now, moving forward, I felt empowered to explore my emotions fully and honestly, embracing the beautiful, complicated, authentic person I was always meant to be. Standing beside Cole in the quiet darkness of the barn, my heart continued beating rapidly, fueled by emotions that I'd rarely allowed myself to feel. I knew that coming here late at night had seemed unusual from the beginning, but I'd never anticipated how deeply this simple moment would affect me. There was something uniquely calming, yet thrilling, about standing so close to him, feeling his steady presence in the silence around us. My fingers moved gently across his warm coat, feeling the strength of his muscles beneath my hand, comforting yet powerful at the same time. As I stood there quietly grooming him, each stroke felt less like a chore and more like a secret conversation between us. A dialogue of touch that spoke clearly, even though no words were exchanged. With every passing minute, the bond I felt between us grew stronger, more intimate, and strangely emotional. I wondered if Cole felt it too, the silent exchange of trust and understanding that seemed to flow effortlessly between us. The barn had transformed into a private place, a safe haven where I could openly acknowledge feelings I'd usually hide from myself. As I continued my work, carefully moving the brush along Cole's sleek, dark coat, my mind began exploring thoughts and desires I hadn't fully acknowledged before. Why did this closeness feel so meaningful, so deeply personal? Why was this moment so different from the many other times I'd cared for horses? The answers weren't clear, but the questions themselves felt powerful. My emotional boundaries were beginning to shift, making room for deeper, more honest feelings. Cole's quiet presence allowed me to explore these emotions without fear of judgment or rejection, encouraging me to go deeper, to truly face myself. With each gentle movement, my heart opened a little more, inviting me to step beyond my comfort zone into a space of vulnerability and honesty. I started to understand that this night wasn't just about caring for an animal. It was about discovering and accepting hidden aspects of myself, desires and emotions I'd always pushed aside. I felt both nervous and excited, aware I was entering emotional territory I'd never fully allowed myself to explore. This quiet, private moment gave me the courage I needed to continue exploring my inner boundaries, discovering what truly moved me, what made me feel deeply alive. Cole's strength seemed to transfer to me, quietly reassuring me that it was okay to feel these intense, unfamiliar emotions. I began realizing how many of my previous limitations were created by my own fears, not by the reality around me. The warmth of Cole's body beneath my fingers symbolized this newfound courage, his quiet calm encouraging me to let go of fear and trust myself. As my emotional barriers began to crumble, I allowed myself to acknowledge desires I'd previously hidden, feelings I'd considered inappropriate or frightening, simply because they were unfamiliar. Here, in this peaceful moment with Cole, those feelings felt natural, real, and incredibly meaningful. Standing quietly in the barn, feeling his gentle presence, I began exploring deeper layers of my own identity. Each moment of closeness seemed to push me further beyond the emotional comfort zone I'd maintained for so long. My thoughts grew clearer as I understood that this exploration wasn't reckless or wrong. It was necessary. It was part of becoming my truest self, part of learning to fully accept who I was, even if that person wasn't exactly who I'd expected. Cole's silent companionship guided me through this emotional journey, his calm demeanor reminding me that I wasn't alone in these complicated feelings. I knew he couldn't fully understand what I was experiencing, yet he provided the silent support I needed to explore myself deeply and honestly. Each gentle touch, each quiet moment beside him felt transformative, a step further into self-awareness and acceptance. Gradually, the fear and uncertainty I felt gave way to calm self-assurance. I realized that exploring my inner boundaries wasn't about stepping into dangerous territory. It was about acknowledging my true emotions without shame or guilt. It felt liberating to finally confront my desires honestly, to admit to myself that I'd kept parts of my identity hidden out of fear or misunderstanding. This night, this encounter with Cole, was changing everything. The barn, once simply a place of routine chores, had become a sacred space for self-discovery. Cole had unknowingly become my silent guide, leading me toward greater authenticity. I realized how deeply I'd been affected by this unexpected emotional journey, one that had begun simply by grooming a beautiful stallion late at night. Now, standing quietly beside him, I understood clearly that my emotional comfort zone had expanded dramatically. I'd allowed myself to acknowledge feelings that once frightened me, desires I'd carefully buried beneath routine and expectation. It was clear this exploration wasn't temporary. It was permanent, reshaping how I viewed myself and my life going forward. As I slowly stepped back from Cole, my heart felt lighter, freer, yet profoundly moved. I'd explored parts of myself tonight that I'd never expected to find, and in doing so, I'd discovered strength in my vulnerability, honesty in my desires, and courage in accepting my true self. The night had quietly become a turning point in my life, guided gently by Cole's silent, reassuring presence. Walking out of the barn, I carried with me the deep understanding and acceptance I'd found in this unexpected emotional exploration. Cole had shown me that true strength comes from facing your hidden feelings, not hiding from them. This night had become a personal revelation, a beautiful awakening that I'd carry forward. Forever grateful for the quiet stallion who'd helped me cross my internal boundaries and embrace the fullness of who I was. After leaving the barn that night, I went back to my house, feeling both shaken and strangely peaceful. The quiet time I'd spent with Cole had stirred something deep within me, emotions that felt both powerful and unfamiliar. I sat quietly in my room, staring out into the darkness, replaying every moment we'd shared, trying to make sense of the intensity I'd experienced. This wasn't something I had planned or even expected to happen, yet it had deeply impacted me in ways I couldn't ignore. At first, I felt confused, unsure how such a simple interaction with a horse could awaken feelings I'd kept hidden for so long. But as I thought more about it, I realized this wasn't really about Cole at all. It was about me. He was simply the catalyst, a silent guide who had helped me finally acknowledge emotions I'd always pushed away. Sitting alone, I began to reflect deeply on why I had always hidden these parts of myself. What had I been afraid of? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I'd always feared the judgment of others, worried about what they might think if they knew the real me, with all my hidden desires and unexplored feelings. I had built walls around my heart, protecting myself from vulnerability and emotional honesty. But tonight, standing quietly beside Cole, those walls had begun to crumble, allowing me to see clearly the person hiding beneath. Someone who was more complex, emotional, and passionate than I had ever admitted. Realizing this felt both scary and incredibly freeing. For the first time, I wasn't trying to suppress or deny my emotions. Instead, I was giving myself permission to feel them fully without shame or guilt. I started to understand that these intense, complicated emotions were part of what made me truly human. Instead of being something to hide, they were something to embrace and explore, even when it felt uncomfortable or uncertain. Each moment of reflection helped me understand more deeply what had happened between Cole and me. It wasn't about physical attraction or something forbidden. It was about honesty, openness, and finally acknowledging feelings I'd kept safely hidden away. I had allowed myself to step beyond my carefully constructed boundaries, exploring emotions that had always seemed too intense or complicated. Cole had given me a safe space, a quiet, judgment-free moment to confront these feelings, honestly. I thought about the strength it had taken for me to face these emotions directly, to admit to myself that I was more emotionally complex than I'd ever realized. It felt like waking up after a long sleep, suddenly seeing myself clearly for the first time. I realized I had grown in ways I hadn't anticipated, becoming more self-aware and emotionally honest. Cole had unknowingly given me this gift, guiding me toward a deeper understanding of myself. As I continued reflecting, I began writing in my journal, capturing my thoughts and emotions honestly. Writing made it easier to sort through the complexity of my feelings. I acknowledged that I was no longer the same person who had entered the barn earlier that evening. I had changed, transformed by the quiet honesty of the experience. My reflections weren't just about what I'd felt in the barn. They were about what these feelings meant for my life going forward. The more I explored my emotions through writing, the clearer it became that embracing these parts of myself was essential for personal growth and true happiness. The walls I'd built had served to protect me from pain, but they had also kept out the fullness of life's experiences. I now realized that true strength and self-awareness came from openness, from accepting every part of myself, including those feelings I'd once feared. Cole had shown me the beauty of vulnerability, quietly encouraging me to face my inner truths. I finally felt brave enough to accept that my emotions, even the complicated or intense ones, weren't something to fear or hide. Instead, they were part of the journey toward self-discovery and personal growth. In the quiet solitude of my room, I understood that this experience had become a pivotal moment in my life, one that had opened the door to genuine self-acceptance. Cole had been the key, guiding me gently toward emotional honesty and clarity. Now, as I sat quietly reflecting, I felt profoundly grateful for the powerful emotions I'd experienced. They had challenged me, pushed me beyond my comfort zone, and ultimately helped me grow into someone stronger, more honest, and more authentically myself. I felt at peace knowing that this experience wasn't something I needed to regret or hide. It was something to cherish, a meaningful chapter in my ongoing journey towards self-awareness. Eventually, I felt exhaustion wash over me, but it wasn't the tiredness of confusion. It was the comforting weariness of emotional release. I knew I'd sleep deeply, no longer burdened by hidden feelings or fear of judgment. Tonight, I had discovered the freedom that came with truly knowing and accepting myself. Tomorrow, I would wake up with new strength, clarity, and confidence. Cole had silently led me to a deeper understanding, showing me how beautiful it was to embrace all of myself, even the parts I hadn't fully understood before. This reflection marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where emotional honesty and self-awareness were guiding principles. I felt ready, grateful, and deeply empowered by this newfound clarity. The complexities of my emotions no longer felt frightening or overwhelming. Instead, they felt natural, beautiful, and essential. Cole had quietly taught me the importance of embracing my true self. Now, with a heart open to life's full spectrum of emotions, I felt more alive and complete than ever before. The next morning, after a restless night filled with thoughts and emotions, I woke up feeling surprisingly clear-headed. It was as if the quiet reflection of the night had helped me untangle feelings that had initially felt overwhelming. The powerful encounter with Cole had sparked emotions I'd long kept hidden, but now I realized I was ready to fully accept them. I knew I had to return to the barn, not to relive what happened, but to find closure, to complete this emotional journey that had unexpectedly started just hours before. I dressed slowly, thoughtfully, each action feeling deliberate, a gentle acknowledgement of the changes I'd experienced. As I walked outside, the morning air felt cool and fresh, gently touching my face as I headed toward the barn. I noticed how different I felt compared to last night. Calmer, steadier, stronger somehow. When I arrived at the barn, the familiar creaking sound of the door opening greeted me like an old friend. I stepped inside slowly, letting my eyes adjust again to the soft morning light filtering gently through the wooden beams. The atmosphere felt peaceful, comforting, and quiet, a gentle contrast to the intense emotions from last night. Cole stood calmly in his stall, quietly eating hay, his presence still powerful but now peaceful, comforting rather than overwhelming. I walked toward him slowly, feeling no urgency or confusion this time. Instead, I felt a calm sense of purpose and gratitude. As I approached, Cole lifted his head, quietly acknowledging my presence. It felt almost as if he understood why I was here again, to find closure, to acknowledge and integrate the powerful feelings he'd unknowingly helped me confront. I gently placed my hand on his warm, smooth coat, feeling a quiet reassurance pass between us. Standing there, silently beside him, I recognized clearly what this return visit was truly about. It wasn't about repeating or reliving anything. It was about accepting what I'd learned about myself, about fully embracing the emotions I'd previously hidden away. Cole had given me a safe space to explore those hidden feelings, to acknowledge their complexity without fear or shame. He had unknowingly helped me understand something crucial, that the emotions I'd been afraid to face were an essential part of who I was. Now, standing beside him again, I fully accepted this truth. It felt like a gentle, powerful breakthrough, a quiet moment of self-acceptance and understanding. The barn had become a special place for me, a place of reflection, growth, and emotional honesty. Cole had become more than just a horse in my care. He had become a symbol of courage and acceptance, quietly guiding me toward deeper self-awareness. I continued gently stroking his side, grateful for this moment, for this opportunity to close this chapter peacefully. It wasn't an ending, it was a beginning, a chance to carry forward these lessons into my everyday life. The emotional boundaries I'd previously clung to so tightly now felt unnecessary. I understood clearly now that true growth meant accepting all parts of myself, even those emotions I'd previously feared or misunderstood. As I stood quietly in the barn, breathing deeply, I realized how deeply transformative this experience had been. It wasn't about physical attraction or crossing boundaries recklessly. It was about emotional honesty, about finally being brave enough to see myself fully, without judgment. Cole had quietly led me to this point, gently pushing me to face my fears, accept my complexities, and embrace my true self. Eventually, I stepped back from Cole, still feeling the warmth of his presence lingering on my fingertips. I knew this moment marked a turning point in my life. I felt a quiet peace settle within me, a calm acceptance of everything I'd felt, learned, and discovered about myself in these brief but powerful moments. This wasn't something to regret or hide. It was something to cherish, a powerful reminder of the strength in vulnerability and honesty. I knew now I didn't need to return here again to relive these emotions. The journey had served its purpose, showing me truths I'd long ignored. Now it was time to carry this newfound self-awareness into my life, using it to live more authentically, openly, and bravely. Walking out of the barn this final time, I felt lighter, stronger, and truly free. Each step felt purposeful, confident, guided by a deep understanding and acceptance of my true self. The barn, Cole, and these powerful moments we'd shared had become an essential part of my story, a gentle reminder of the beauty found in authenticity, self-awareness, and genuine growth. Returning home, I spent the rest of the day quietly reflecting on what I'd learned. I wrote in my journal again, capturing every feeling, every insight, knowing it would help me fully integrate this newfound understanding into my life. I realized clearly that the intense emotions I'd encountered weren't temporary. They were an integral part of who I was, something to honor rather than fear. Cole had unknowingly given me the courage to face myself honestly, completely, without shame or fear. The evening arrived slowly, peacefully. As I prepared to sleep, I felt deeply grateful. This experience, once confusing and overwhelming, had become something profoundly meaningful. It had challenged me, pushed me beyond emotional boundaries I'd never expected to cross. Yet ultimately, it had led me to clarity and self-acceptance. Cole had become a quiet teacher, silently encouraging me to embrace myself fully, to accept the complexity of my own emotions without judgment or fear. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt stronger, more confident, and truly at peace with who I was becoming. This experience had sparked genuine personal growth, gently guiding me toward a deeper, more authentic understanding of myself. Cole had shown me the importance of courage, vulnerability, and emotional honesty, quietly guiding me toward a future filled with acceptance, strength, and self-awareness.